G'day guys, welcome back to another video. My name's Justin. Today's upload I'm going to be showing you some before and after clips of my reef tank after not seeing it for 3 weeks, as well as some tips on how to manage your reef tank before you go away. So the footage that you guys are seeing now is before I left the tank. I did go overseas for 3 weeks and only had my dad feed the tank with dry food once per day. As you can see from the footage, I've been really happy with how the tank has been running and how it looks. Everything is looking fairly healthy. The fish are happy and getting along for the most part. And I just think ever since I changed the rockscape to a single piece of rock, it's just been much easier to clean and manage. And as you can see, the recording on screen is looking nice and plump ever since I got it. And as well as the macroalgae is really growing in, and it's completely covered that back wall, so I will have to remove that or cut it back a little bit. But what can I say, everything has been running pretty sweet, but things can go downhill quite quickly once you leave your tank. So stay tuned, because I'm going to show you guys how the tank looks after 3 weeks. Yeah, maybe you can hone in on some of the tips that I'm about to give. Alright guys, and this is how the tank is looking after 3 weeks of no water changes, no cleaning, nothing of that sort, just feeding the fish. As you can see, all the walls are extremely covered in algae. What I'm going to do, I'm going to clean this front wall just so you guys can look into the tank properly and see how things are. The back wall with the feathered caliper has almost completely taken over at least a quarter of the tank, so I'm going to need to cut that back as well. I am considering completely removing it because I do think it's stripping the tank of all its nutrients, but it does make it easier for me in terms of worrying about nutrient spikes and things like that, because it takes care of most nitrates and phosphates. But as you can see, everything looks pretty good from here. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut that. I'm going to clean the algae in the front and we'll take a look. Now that I've cleaned the front panel, I got most of it off. My trochus snail Jonathan is in the way, so I couldn't get all of it off. And there's a bunch of amphipods that are living on the exterior and interior of his shell in that algae there. But anyway, this is how the tank is looking. You can see for the most part, a lot of the corals are looking nice and plump, particularly the acan colony here. And you can see a couple, you probably can't see it from this angle. I'll see if you can see it from here. Yeah, you can see it from there. You can see the blastos are looking pretty good. There is a little bit of bubble algae on that one, and as well as my soft coral. But besides that, it is all looking pretty good. My GSP at the back is closed up. You can see there. I did trim it back a little bit before I left, so it's probably still reeling from that. As you can see, this peppermint shrimp come out. I do have some algae that is growing on my pectinia, which is housing my clownfish. So that's something that I constantly have to sort of maintain. But besides that, it's looking pretty good. My scully is doing all right. I feel like there's been a little bit of growth. My 2 mushrooms that were sitting just over there fell down. It was probably knocked over by snow, but they're looking all right. And the ricks that I purchased not too long before I left is doing okay. There is some algae that is growing around it. It's some sort of macroalgae that I will maintain and remove shortly. Sorry about all the particles that are flying around the tank, as I obviously just cleaned the front of the glass. But what I'm going to do now, guys, if you're keen to stick around for the rest of the video, I'm going to run through a couple of tips that I followed over the last 3 weeks to basically ensure that there was no issues with the tank while I was gone, because I only had my old man, my dad, feed the tank and only feed the fish actually with just flake food and a couple of other pellets. So there was no frozen food feedings and things like that. So I'm going to go through a couple of steps in regards to what I follow, which you can feel free to use if you are ever leaving your reef tank, and just to ensure that, you know, there's obviously no catastrophic events or anything like that. Alright, so tip number one, and probably the most important, is having a large ATO reservoir. Now you can see this reservoir on camera that I'm using, it's about 30 litres, so it's almost 50% of my actual tank's volume, which is ideal in making sure that you've got enough water to actually top up any evaporated water that will inevitably happen. And obviously the longer you are away, the more larger reservoir you're going to want to need, and also a reliable ATO with that as well. I'm using the Ripple Nano ATO. There's plenty of ATOs out there. Every man and his dog is now making an ATO, so I would highly recommend getting one, and you can look into that and look at fail safes and things like that as well. Now the next thing I'd recommend is having an auto fish feeder with a mix of crushed flake and pellet food. I was lucky enough to have my dad be able to feed the tank every day, so I didn't need one, but I definitely will be getting one shortly. And especially if you guys have got a bigger tank, get an auto feeder, set it up, test it out for a couple of weeks before you leave, and make sure it's all good to go, because obviously having your fish fed is probably one of the most, if not the most important thing, and that food will obviously find its way to the corals as well. I would also highly recommend getting a feeding ring. Basically what that'll do is it'll ensure that the food that you're feeding it, the flakes, or if it's floating food, won't actually go directly into the overflow. So if the fish don't go for it straight away, it will just stay there, rather than just going straight into the overflow and decaying in your sump. Tip number 3 might be a bit of a controversial one, but for me it's lowering the water level inside your skimmer, or closing the air intake so your skimmer level drops. The reason I recommend doing this is because leaving your tank for so long, the chance of it over skimming and absolutely flooding the tank is it's always there. It's neither low nor high, but it's always there. And obviously, if your skimmate line is connected to say a drain or a cup, and for whatever reason, say something dies in your tank and your skimmer overflows and it continuously overflows, you could actually drain your tank. So it could be catastrophic, which is why I turn the skimmer level down. So it'll still skim, and it'll be a really sludgy skimmate, and it'll be in the interior of the actual skimmer. But what it means is it really lowers the chance of your tank draining and in that catastrophic event. So reduce the skimmer level if you want to sort of mitigate that risk. So that's what I would recommend for the main part. Some other useful tips include, obviously, if you can have someone watch over the tank, that would be probably the most ideal thing. But if you want to keep it fully automated, you can do that in this day and age. You've got systems like the Apex system, and there's a couple of other ones there from different brands where you can control everything from while being remote. Or if you don't want to shell out for an expensive automated system, you can get a Wi-Fi camera and some smart Wi-Fi plugs, and you can sort of tinker with things while being away. I also hope you guys enjoyed that footage of my trochus snail with his friends. Just a couple things before I wrap up the video. I did some testing as soon as I got back on my nitrates and phosphate. As you can see, the nitrates did come up as 0. No real surprise because of the macroalgae that I run, and with obviously no frozen food being fed over the last 3 weeks, there probably wasn't much nutrients, to be honest. So I'm going to work on getting that back up so we can colour up some of the corals. The phosphate is showing up as 0. I did mess up the first test, but it tested at 0.21, so not too bad, pretty manageable. And I did upgrade my lights. Unfortunately, my AI primes stopped working, so I purchased some second-hand Hydra 26s, HD. I bought 2 units and some other stuff that I got a really good deal, which I'll show you guys in a video that will be coming out fairly soon. And that is basically it for today's video. I really do appreciate if you guys have made it to this part. And going forward, I'm going to try to upload as much as I can. If you were wondering where I had been, I was overseas for 3 weeks in India. But I'm back now, and really roaring to get on the upload schedule again and continue with my reefing journey. So once again, thank you guys for watching the video. Best of luck with your own personal tanks, and as always, happy reefing.